Hello folks, so welcome to the Innovv N2. I thought I would do the majority, if not all of this video out on a ride because it's a lovely November morning, well almost lunchtime now. I need to set the time on the bike, it's wrong, but it's a sunny day, it's not raining, which makes a change for November in England. So I thought I would do a review of the N2 rather than you having to sit with me in my little plastic shed. I'm not going to go too spec heavy on it because I know people don't really like that. I do tend to get a little bit nerdy when it comes to these units and what I tend to sort of delve into. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to breeze through the OS and the specs, and I'm going to put more information, if you so wish, on my Patreon page, which, if you haven't seen my video, don't panic, it's free. There's no paid tier. It's just, makes it easier for me to nerd out a little bit and actually put more, detail into some of the things that I want to talk about, rather than you have to listen to it. So I'm going to leave most of the specs for that, side of it. So obviously this is the new version of Innovv's N series, which is the N2. Replaces the N1. Same size screen. I think it's 5.99 inch. And they sent me the 2K front and rear cameras. So you can you can order them with the 1080p ones. So I'm just going to quickly go through the OS, and I mean very quickly. So this is your main screen, which if I'm honest, I don't really use because obviously I spend most of my time on the Apple CarPlay. But we can go into the dash cam, which we will in a moment. We watch any of our footage back. The settings, I'm going to spend the least amount of time in here. Obviously, if you have the optional TPMS modules, which I don't, then you can set that up in there. Time, display and video, you can change the background. You can set the brightness to auto or to manual. You just saw it there, obviously dim down, but I'm going to put it back up to full brightness. Sound source, this is an important one. Out of the box, that is set to phone. I would advise not changing that, because it will, if you set it to device, you won't get any audio out of your phone to your headset. You'll need to pair your headset straight to this. So that's enough for that screen. Storage, I've stuck in a 256 gig card, although it does say 0 gig of 0 gig used, which is a bit interesting. So no SD card. Well, I don't have an SD card in there, so that's my fault. I must have removed that to get some of the footage off. Obviously GPS reset, more. We want that in miles because I have done a reset on this. And then if we go into the dash cam side of it, we have all of the usual options. We can record, we can take a screenshot, lock a video, switch the cameras, go into the settings. Now this is a crucial one. If you get either like a green weird view on the cameras or just black, it'll be because this setting isn't set right. It does mention it in the instructions, but if you do a firmware update, it will reset it back to 1080p. So if you have the 2K cameras and you get no video feed, please check that, because I fell into that trap. G sensor is obviously for accident, and if it senses something, it will obviously lock the file. Obviously parking mode, etc. I have that switched off. Rear camera mirror, but yeah, we can switch from the front to the rear, etc, etc. So that's all I'm going to do for the the actual user interface, Innovv's instruction manual is pretty good. So we obviously also have this little accessibility option, so we can lock the screen, change the brightness, turn the screen off, go back to home, etc. So I'm going to set a course for Williams BMW in Manchester, which is where I'm heading, and we'll do the unboxing, and then we shall come back for my thoughts, and I'll obviously overlay some of the videos both from day and night time.
Hello folks, editing Paul here. I'm just in the middle of, finishing this, and it's become apparent that the video runs a hell of a lot longer than I'd originally expected, sort of in the 40-minute range. So as much as the unboxing and the fitting section I think are very useful, I won't be offended if you skip all of that. The unboxing especially seemed to go on for a hell of a lot longer than I thought. If you really want to know what you get in the kit, the fine detail about everything that's in there, please watch it. But like I said, couldn't really squeeze it down any smaller than that. So if you just want to go from the intro, straight to the end, absolutely fine. I won't sulk too much. Okie dokie. Anyway, on with the video.
Right, let's get it unboxed and see what's in there. This is my least favourite part of it, but it's got to be done. So they also sent me a tempered glass screen protector, which looks like it also fits the N1, which is not a surprise because both are, I think, a 5.99 inch screen, but I'll probably make a complete and utter balls up of sticking that on. So I'll tell you what, let's have a look at the cameras first. Let's put this over here. Right, so we have both of the cameras. Let's just, I'll tell you what, let's pop them out of here so I don't drop them. And I will say they are incredibly heavy. Quite clearly made out of, metal. Very similar connections to the Chigee with this, metal with what I assume on the other end will be a sort of rubber seal. That will be the front one, I'm assuming, because it is the shorter of the wires, and this will be the rear one. And then we have two sets of mounting hardware, which I'll tell you what, let's tip that out. Try not to make a mess of it, but I always do. So we have some, this looks like it is what would be a self-adhesive mount, so it will bend to a slightly curved surface. Replacement sticky pad. That presumably is a piece of rubber if you're to protect the outside of something, which I'm not quite sure what, but that'll be why there are instructions, Paul. Some rubber, some pieces of rubber here. We'll find out what they are at a later point. And then we have some right angled bits here. So we have the actual clamp that goes around the unit, and then we have this, which will obviously allow you to mount it like that, and bolt through, and then I imagine a screw will then go through into the base plate. But it looks like, and I think these are for cable management, a variety of bolts in here, all very high quality as you would expect, but I'm assuming this is so that you can mount it to an indicator stalk. So you could, you know, have it like that, if I can get it in, you know, focus, which I might actually do. Now, this is all, you know, metal, so should withstand a bit of a beating. So obviously the quality you would expect from, you know, Innovv. So, and that's everything for the cameras. I'll obviously tidy that up later on. Let's move the cameras and the box out of the way, and let's get on to the exciting stuff, which is the actual unit itself. So we've got a 5.99 inch screen, Bluetooth 5.2, over-the-air updates. Really happy to see that. That's one thing a lot of these types of units are actually missing, to keep them, you know, current and up to date. Advanced, you know, GPS, IP67 waterproof. Not really anything else of note on the box. If I can get it out. Right, let's stick that out of the way. How to leave deer on our customer. Yeah, okay. Fine. And then we have this piece of foam, and we have the unit itself, which I'm going to have to tip out, otherwise I'm not going to be able to reach it. Right, let's pull that through there. Finally. Okay, so we have the unit itself. I have to say it is remarkably light, like very, very, very light. Now it does appear to be made of plastic. So we have some what looks like some ports on the bottom for USB and the SD card, and it looks like you can just pull that flap up. Yeah, there we go. We have an SD card slot and a USB-C. Now, I would say this is probably a less secure method than you get on other units like the Chigee, etc., but far easier if you want to gain access to the SD card, because on a lot of these units they have two very, very tiny screws, and yeah, they get lost easy. Okay, so we have 4 lots of wiring. I'm going to assume one is for the power, 2 are for the cameras, and 1 is for the GPS. So power, GPS, rear and front. Okay, not really a lot else on the outside of the unit. So we have the mounting point there and what looks like a grill to allow air or sound. Let's put the main unit out of the way. So here we have the wiring harness, which I'm going to wire up to the Hex EasyCan, just to make life a bit easier. Well, I'm going to wire the accessory one anyway. I'm going to wire these directly to the battery, obviously. And then in here we have some mounts, and in here we have even more mounts. So I really should have read the instructions first because I don't know what half of this stuff is. But that is an Allen key, some bolts and a collar. In here we have, I mean, they certainly have provided everything. So here is the instructions, which, like I say, I will obviously go over before I start to install this. But we have some rubber pads here, what looks like a bracket. Oh, okay. So that looks like it is a bracket for the back to mount onto the unit itself. Yeah, like that. And then you can bolt it directly onto a bar, because I was a bit concerned about having to use ball joints and it's sticking too far out. So I will need to obviously have a play around with this, but it does look like you can make this fit. So the bar on my R1250 GS, I don't have an R1250 GS anymore, Paul. You have an R1300. That has a 12 mil, nav bar, like most BMs, which I think that, with the right one, when I actually get it right, Paul, will fit straight into. So that is probably going to be the option that I'm going to use. I am being a little bit stupid here, but that's probably going to be the best and most, solid way for me to mount this. And then, for goodness sake, Paul, get a grip. And then that's going to sit in there. And you can see that, yeah. So I'm probably going to go with that mount if I'm honest. But there are obviously some different inserts depending on the width of the bar that you're going to use. And then in here we've got a couple of what look like 1-inch ball mounts with some nice rubber seals, an Allen key, and then we have a sort of runner of the mill RAM mount type thing. So if you did want to mount this onto an existing RAM mount that you have, you could obviously do that. So I'm going to assume that if you were going to do that, let's take these rubber seals so that I don't lose them. I'm going to assume that in order to do it that way, you would take this and it would go directly into the back of the unit. So pretty versatile. So a lot of these only come with the sort of RAM mounts. They don't actually come with this type of thing. So I'm incredibly happy, because that's one of the criticisms I've had of these universal ones. I mean, I like the ones that fit directly into the BMW nav cradle, but if I'm going to have to take that off and mount it, I want to at least be able to mount it directly to the actual nav bar, rather than use this and it have to stick out so far. So I'm really quite happy that they've included that. I will go into more detail about any bits and bobs in here that I've missed or forgotten to point out what they are, but I haven't looked at the instructions yet, so you're seeing this for the first time like me. So anyway, let's get it mounted on the bike, and if I need to correct myself about what any of this is, I will obviously let you know then. So just to add, I was just looking in the instructions and I'm more or less right with how this can be installed, but it looks like this that I said I didn't know what it was is an extension column, so that you can obviously sit the unit further out if it should foul the screen, which I might have to. But yeah, those are the collars I shall be using for my nav mount, and obviously you can use the RAM mount type one as well, and obviously bolt that presumably directly to your handlebars. So that's quite neat that you can use when I can get hold of it again one-handed, that you can use this for two different purposes. So really quite like that. Okay folks, you're going to have to excuse the mess, but I've been playing around for a couple of days with how I'm going to mount this. So let's start with the wiring. Now I will say a caveat out loud. Although I have done what looks like a reasonably permanent install, if this was going to be literally a permanent install forever, I would definitely do things differently, and I'll highlight what they are as I go. But I'm swapping these units out so frequently that I didn't just want to stick the cable into the side of the bike and, you know, have it on a little ball mount, because I want to do some mileage, you know, on it. I don't just want to do a first ride, it works great, you should buy it, here's a discount, you know, link. I wanted to actually do minimum several hundred miles with it. So I wanted to do an install that I could live with, but wasn't necessarily fully permanent. So the wiring. Now, under these R1300s is a mess anyway, but there is a lot of extra wiring because of the EasyCan and the lights that I have that use 3 circuits of the EasyCan. So I'm using the 4th circuit on the EasyCan configured as an accessory output to power the yellow. Oh, that's falling. To power the yellow switched, live. The red and black are going directly to the battery, and the yellow is obviously what's going to the EasyCan to actually trigger it to switch on. So I've gone with the same wiring path down the side of the tank that I did for the lights. Now, this is where I would do things differently. If I was doing this permanently, I would take the petrol tank off. I know it's not hard, but I don't want to keep doing it too many times, and knowing my luck, I'd probably set myself on fire. So I totally acknowledge that looks ugly. It'll be covered up, you won't see it, but if I was going to do this permanently, I would run it under the tank, and then it comes down here and up here, and then over the air vent, and then it's basically tucked behind here where some of the factory wiring is, and then it goes up into the radar dome. Now here's where things get very messy. The GPS module, I was going to run that all the way to the back of the bike and stick it down, but I think it will work here. But the wiring, it's about, I reckon it's got to be over 1 meter long. And again, if I was going to do this as a permanent install, I would probably either run it to the back of the bike and stick it, or I would risk shortening the wire. But it's in there and it's firm. It's not going to go anywhere. And this is probably one of the things that I like least about this unit, because as you can see, it's got four wires coming out of the back, and there isn't really a nice way to sort of hide them. I would have preferred one wire that then splits off, down here. Anyway, it's all, wired in. The front camera is hanging on the floor, so is the rear one. But it is wired up, and if I turn the bike on, the EasyCan is going to cause it to fire up. There we go. Ignore the errors on the dash. That's because I've got rid of the original extra lights. And there we have it. And then we can go into the dash cam, which is obviously looking at the floor. Right, let's finish it off and show you what it's like afterwards. Okay folks, most of the panels are back on. The cameras are mounted, I think, in their final spot. I did have to move the front one, so it's there. So I did have it mounted further back. I was going to use the sticky mounts, but I don't think it would sit far enough down to miss the lip of this. So I don't know. I'm in two minds as to whether or not to leave it there, but I'm kind of stuck for other options, because I don't really want it actually sitting on the beak here like I had Chigee cameras. I mean, it would be the prime spot, but I don't know. I'm not really a fan of it. I did consider up here, you know, somewhere maybe up here. I was even considering getting a friend of mine, John, to 3D, you know, print me like some sort of bracket that would go here. But I'm terrible for keeping my screen clean. So, yeah, the footage would probably look bad. But for now, that's gonna do. I might move the angle a little bit, but for now, that's gonna be the place. Most of the panels are on now. Just need to tidy up the wiring for the rear camera, and then really it can go for, well, we can get started with actually firing it up, you know, properly for the first time, going through the menu, obviously, you know, linking up my phone, and then going out for a ride. So I want to get at least a couple of 100 miles under my belt, you know, with this before I give any final thoughts on it. So yeah, watch this space. Okay, so the bike is back together. So let's just, so that is where I've gone with for the rear. Let's just move this out of the way. Things are a bit of a mess in here, but yeah, that's where I've chosen to mount the rear one. Like I said, I didn't want to use the sticky pads. I'll explain at the end of the video why. Obviously one reason is I'm constantly chopping and you know changing. I will tidy up that wire, just make sure it's kind of stuck out of the way. But that's done. And then as we move forward, so in the end I wasn't able to get the, you know, GPS module, you know, hidden away under here. There was just too much wiring. So rather than cut it and solder it, etc., there's actually like a ledge under here that sits above where the air duct is. So I've actually stuck it in there, and all of the excess wiring's basically going behind here, and then it goes up and under here into the sort of radar dome. But as I said earlier, I wasn't massively happy with where I'd mounted the front, you know, camera. It was fine, there was nothing wrong with it, but it just kind of bothered me. So I had a bit of a brainwave, and now normally when that happens with me, things end badly and I break stuff. However, I'm quite happy with this. So what I've done is I've actually moved it to there, and it's actually, you know, central. Now I have kind of gone against, you know, Innovv's recommended way to mount the actual brackets, but what I've done is I've essentially taken that bolt out down there. There's, you know, 3 of these that sit in these rubber mounts, and I've basically used a longer mount to actually put the L-shaped, you know, bracket on there, and it fits rather nicely, and it's nice and secure. There is a little bit of movement in there, but there are some rubber mounting points on there. So yeah, I'm really quite happy with it. Now obviously the smart people amongst you will obviously recognize that this does make it harder for me to actually take this off and clean it. Luckily I only have to undo that bolt there and the one on the other side, drop this strap out of the way, and I can take it off easily. So yeah, that's how I've got it, you know, mounted. I'm not massively happy with the wiring up top. You know, there are 4 wires unfortunately. There isn't really an ideal way to hide those. So it'll do for now. I have ordered a pyramid Pyramid Plastics do a cover that basically sits here and goes all the way up there and kind of hides all of this area. Apparently it's to stop water, which I must admit I've never personally had an issue with. But even though I may not keep the Innovv on here, you know, permanently, because I'm always testing these and, you know, constantly replacing them, that might actually look quite nice and hide all of this plus the wiring. So I may get that before the video's done. I don't know, it's on a 2 to 4 week, you know, back order, so not quite sure about that yet. But yeah, that's the actual physical install done. So let's get it set up and see what's what.
Okay, and let's go. I'm giving Apple Maps Apple Maps a go, even though I'm not a huge fan of it. You know, also, I won't be overly offended if you skip the unboxing. It is, you know, fairly straightforward. I mean, the unboxing is fairly comprehensive because you do get a lot of stuff in the kit, a lot of different mounting pads, you know, brackets, etc., and obviously different ways that you can mount it on, like a ball mount, etc. But I won't be offended if you skip that part and go straight to what I think of the unit. Right, while I'm sat on the boring M62 because I'm pressed for time, what do I think of this? The good and the bad. Now there is one thing about this that for me personally is a deal, you know, breaker, but I'll leave that till the end. The quality of everything in the kit, absolutely fantastic quality. No issues there. The instructions were easy to follow. The quality of the cameras is probably the best that I've seen. They're still maybe not quite as crisp as I was hoping they would be. Now, I will, you know, caveat and say that the footage from the front camera will look a bit shaky. That is my fault because I've mounted it in a place that looks really nice and neat. But unfortunately, what I hadn't factored in is there's a rubber mount behind it. So the camera's bouncing up and down. So forgive, that's not the Innovv, that's me. So yeah, the quality of the quality of all of the parts, absolutely great. The camera's, like I say, you know, sharp. It's worked flawlessly. I've done probably, I'd say 700-800 miles with it now, because I always like, I don't want to be one of these people on YouTube that unboxes, you know, something, shows it on their bike, or, you know, just sort of, you know, mounted here loosely on the bars, goes for a ride around the block and says, yeah, it's great, use my affiliate link down below. That just feels, maybe disingenuous is the wrong word, but it's not me. As I've mentioned 100 times already, I test new software for a living, and I'm paid to find new problems, and I'm pretty good at it. So I always find things that I don't like, and I always like to give them a decent run. So I used this for the entire trip up to the lakes recently, with Cheap-Up One for one of his clam rides. No issues. It has never disconnected once or failed to connect. The reliability of it has been absolutely fine, as you would expect for the money. Screen. How is the screen? So I will say the screen is fine. It's big. It's bright enough, although I wouldn't say it's the brightest, but I would say it is perhaps a little less glary than some others that I've used. So the screen is fine. It's sharp. It's easy to read. I will say perhaps it's maybe not the most punchiest in terms of the color. and the saturation, but I mean that's a personal, that's a personal thing, and not really something I can mark it, down on. What else is there? So yeah, overall, the quality of the system and the reliability plus the cameras, I think, is the biggest, selling point of this. And certainly for people that want a dash cam for their bike from a tried and trusted brand. Innovv is right up there with the best. So let's move on to things that I don't like, and some of these are going to be subjective, and some of them are going to be able to be fixed with software updates. So the mounting system. So the mounting system obviously comes with a way to mount it to different size bars, which is what I've done here. Now, that's one thing I like, as well as having the option to mount it on a RAM mount style ball. You can obviously mount it straight to a bar, which a lot of these units don't, come with. But it has to sit on a little extension collar. That means that it vibrates a little bit more than I would like. And had it not been for that air extension piece, I could have mounted it closer to the bar and have less vibration on it. Now, the bracket on the back will bolt straight to the back of the unit without the extension. But because Innovv has used 2 bolts to actually secure the clamp to the bar, instead of I'm sure there's some logic behind it, but instead of having both of the bolts going in from the back, one goes in from the back and one goes in from the bottom, and it's only threaded on one side, which means if I don't use the extension collar to move the unit slightly out from the actual bracket, I can't then get to the bottom bolt to tighten it up. Now, I did consider, threading it the other side and modifying it, but I don't really want to do that because I don't know what I'm going to do with this unit yet. So that's one thing about the mounting system that I'm not so keen on. And it says this is a 50, but it was a 70 last time I came down here. Whoops-a-daisy. The other thing about the mounting system, and unless I've been a complete and utter moron, is usually these types of units, for the cameras, they have a plastic base that you obviously stick to your bike with the 3M VHB pad, and then it just has a sort of raised bit with a hole through the middle of it, and you then obviously use the little sort of clamp to put the camera on. With the Innovv sticky mount, you have to put the bolt through the plastic base, then put the sticky mount, then put the actual sticky pad over the top of it and stick it to the bike, and you then use the sort of rectangular mounting part to then obviously bolt everything together. But although I didn't give this a go, and I'm sure it's fine, if it ever comes loose, you're not going to be able to get to the head of the main bolt that goes through the sticky pad, that goes through the plastic bit, because obviously the sticky pad is going to be over the top of it, and it's going to be stuck to your bike. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. What else don't I like? So the auto, brightness on it is incredibly aggressive. While I was riding along in the lakes, obviously we were going past, a lot of trees in and out of shaded areas, and it was very quickly and aggressively, dimming, then brightening up, dimming. and it did it so much that it was a bit of a distraction out of the bottom of my eye. So I've switched that off. Now, the good thing is I'm pretty certain that that can be a software update. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. The firmware update, check, that needs a bit of work, because at the moment, you obviously link it to Wi-Fi, do a check for an update, and what I would expect, like most other things do, is that it would say either you are already on the latest version, or there is an update. Would you like to go ahead? Unfortunately, what it does at the moment is it actually doesn't tell you if there is a later version. It just runs the update. You reboot, all of your settings get reset back to default. You don't lose your footage on the SD card, don't worry. But you then look at the version number and it's the same, because all it's doing is just reinstalling whatever the latest is. So that could easily be fixed with a simple software update. So again, not the end of the world, and I realise most people probably don't do the software updates that frequently anyway. So I just realised I had the screen brightness turning down. So the one thing that for me is the one and only, and I do stress it, is the only reason that I wouldn't use this on my bike moving forward, and that is because I've gotten used to being able to control these units with the Wonder Wheel. And once you've had that, it's kind of hard to go back. Now, I do still, on those units that do have the Wonder Wheel control, I do still use them with my fingers. And generally, I don't have any huge issues. I'd say the Carpurides and the Aooccis for me have been the best in terms of responsiveness when wearing thicker winter-style gloves like these, which are the Risha Street Touring Gore-Tex gloves. The Chigee has probably been the least responsive, which is surprising considering the cost. But this, for me, I find incredibly frustrating, because it literally does not. Oh, it's going to prove me wrong now. It will work with winter gloves, but more often than not, I will only ever touch the screen while I'm riding if it's just literally a quick button press and kind of muscle memory. I know what I'm doing, because obviously you shouldn't be messing around with it while you're riding. So I thought I'd obviously say that before some bright spark obviously puts in the comments that you shouldn't really be messing around with it while you're riding. And you are absolutely right. But occasionally I'll stop at some lights and I'll just change apps, do whatever. And I find this screen probably the least responsive so far to winter gloves. It does say in the manual that it should be used with glove, touchscreen friendly gloves, but not everyone has those. So I don't know what Innovv can really do about that, because that, I think, is baked in. That is the hardware. That is the layer under the screen that obviously has the touch layer on it. But that's it. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'm now here at Williams. There will be a link in the description for some money off, and obviously, as always, full transparency. I will get a little something back if you do use it. So I will catch you in the next video, and yeah, thanks for watching.